bring you Killer Wives, episode 56. Death of a comedian. These are the case facts against Phil Hartman, who murdered her own husband. Isn't trust a bitch? Encino, California, famous birthplace of Selena Gomez, Channing Tatum, but also made famous for the murder of comedian Phil Hartman. Literally no one who enjoyed the comic genius of Phil Hartman could have predicted that his wife would murder him in his sleep in the spring of 1998. Some 12 hours after his murder, medical examiners will remove the long-term comedian and his wife's bodies from their $1 million residence. That's right, Phil Hartman would be dead too, due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound 6 hours after she originally shot Phil. But how do we get here? How does one place a toe tag on a well-known Saturday Night Live comedian at the height of his career? Speculations will swirl around Hollywood as to why Bryn killed Phil. But I believe she shot him that Thursday for a reason connected to this date. To find that connection, we must venture backwards to the past, beyond Bryn's last drink with her producer, beyond her final drive home that night with a loaded .38 caliber pistol, further than her last conversation with her male friend and former lover. We go back to the date in hindsight that would make all this clear. Mother's Day, 1997. Mother's Day 1997 is believed to be the day that Bryn fell off the wagon. A recovering alcoholic and cocaine user, Bryn had recently resumed drinking after a decade of near sobriety. She had been using cocaine since she was first introduced to it in the Hollywood setting. By all accounts, Bryn's drinking matched this year that Phil and she tied the knot. But on Mother's Day, she was reintroduced to it by a famed comedian, Andy Dick. At the time, Andy and Phil were co-stars on a comedy show, News Radio. The incident occurred at a party at Hartman's residence, to which Andy was a guest. It was there that Bryn asked Andy, did he have any cocaine? To which Dick replied, yes. In a later interview, Andy would confess that he didn't know that Bryn had a problem with drugs before he gave her the cocaine. Another comedian, John Lovitz, a friend of the family, will publicly blame Dick after Phil's murder, not only for reintroducing Bryn to cocaine, but for Phil's demise. In fact, Lovitz would confront Dick while he exited a Hollywood studio lot to tell him that he was responsible for this tragedy. Either way, Bryn was on a mission that began on Mother's Day 1997, but will culminate with Phil's death shortly after Mother's Day 1998. Many of the family's close friends have credited Bryn with being a supermom, but I don't see it that way. I believe Bryn hated the fact that she didn't have an acting career as large as her husband's, and that her children were tying her down to the house. This is why I fervently believe that Andy Dick was not to blame for Bryn's rekindled drug addiction, as much as Bryn's depression with being a mother and a wife in Hollywood. What started out as a coping mechanism addiction in 1997 would become a full-blown hate crime in 1998. Bryn avidly hated Phil and his successful career, although his positioning and income in the theater of acting benefited his house. This is why going through yet another Mother's Day in 1998, hit Bryn like an aging ton of bricks in a position she no longer desired. I believe she killed Phil on that day, as it was a throwback to the past when he had to report to the set of Saturday Night Live to film his sketch between Thursday morning and Saturday night. Now, this was besides the fact that he had left the syndicated program years earlier. Further evidence that Bryn despised her role as a mother was that she left her children orphaned at such a tender age. By that time, hatred for Phil had far outweighed what would happen to her children in their formative years. We travel forward through time, back before death to that fate-filled day when the Hartman tragedy approached a deadly crescendo. On the evening of May 27, it began with Bryn visiting the Italian bistro Buca di Beppo with her friend Christine Zander, a supervising producer with the NBC sitcom Third Rock from the Sun. Bryn had played bit parts in 2 episodes as well as herself in the movie North. That night, Bryn nursed 2 cosmopolitans over 2 hours and didn't talk about any problems, says her producer Zander. In fact, the two made plans to meet the following weekend. Even that fateful night, Bryn gave no hint that anything was amiss as she relaxed in Buca di Beppo. The only thing unusual was that she was there without Phil, recalls the bartender. Around 9:45 p.m., they got up to leave. "Goodbye. It was good seeing you," the bartender called out to them. Bryn smiled and responded, "I'll be back real soon, and I'll be sure to bring Phil next time." But what she didn't tell him was that there would be no next time. Later that night, Bryn returned to her Encino home and had a heated argument with Hartman. Phil had made it very clear that if Bryn started using drugs again, that would end the relationship. But this was typical for one of their disagreements. Bryn would fill herself up with liquid courage to get his attention, and when she got amped up enough, he would simply go to sleep. He would withdraw, and in the morning he'd wake up and everything would be fine. The only difference this night is that his sleeping pattern would be disturbed by fatal consequences. Shortly before 3 a.m., Bryn shot Hartman 3 times as he slept, once in his forehead above his nose, once in his right jaw, and once in his right side. Bryn used a Smith & Wesson Model 15 38 caliber 4-inch blue steel revolver bearing serial number IK66888, and it came back as registered to Mr. Hartman. The weapon Bryn used on herself was a Charter Arms undercover blue steel 2-inch 38 caliber revolver bearing serial number 910459. That came back as unregistered. According to a source close to the family, their son Sean, who had been in his bedroom upstairs, told police he had heard some sounds he described as the slamming door. Following the shooting, Bryn fled the scene and drove to the home of Ron Douglas, a longtime friend of hers. She confessed to Douglas what she had done, but he didn't believe her. She made a second call to another friend and again confessed to the crime. Bryn then returned her Encino home with Douglas, and at 6:20 a.m., he called 911. Police arrived quickly and escorted a frantic Sean to safety. As they were taking a terrified Bergen, his daughter, out of the house, officers heard a gunshot inside. Storming the bedroom, they found the bloodied Hartman on the bed, and Bryn killed herself with a second revolver, shooting herself in the right eye. How a 10-year marriage of one of Hollywood's most amiable celebrities could end in a bloody murder-suicide was a question that vexed friends and fans alike in the days following Hartman's death. "This is just a tragedy beyond description," says Rita Wilson, Tom Hanks' wife and Hartman's co-star in the 1996 film Jingle All the Way. Now 2 children are left without 2 most important people in their lives, and with a lifetime of confusion. Hartman played in House Guest with Sinbad and numerous movies and voiceovers during his extraordinary career. What made the tragedy more puzzling was that, on the surface at least, the Hartman's marriage was as robust as his career. The Canadian-born Hartman, 49 years of age at the time, was an enormously talented and popular performer, lauded for his stinging impressions of Bill Clinton and Frank Sinatra on Saturday Night Live, the goofy character he voiced on The Simpsons, and for his role as a pompous anchor Bill McNeil on the NBC News comedy News Radio, which has recently been renewed for a 4th season at the time. He had also starred in such movies as the 1994's Greedy with Michael J. Fox, and 1996 Sergeant Bilko opposite Steve Martin. And most recently, he lent his baritone to the children's action comedy Small Soldiers, which unfortunately came out after his death. The Hartman children, who are grown now, were staying with Hartman's brother John, a Los Angeles record company executive, until, as stipulated by Hartman's will, they were taken by Bryn's married sister Catherine Kay, who lives in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Hartman's will, which estimates his worth at $1.2 million, also states his desire to be cremated and have his ashes scattered over Emerald Bay on California's Catalina Island. A separate memorial for Hartman at Forest Lawn Memorial was held. Hartman also had an artistic streak that led him to California's State University Northridge, where he majored in graphic design. After graduating, he designed art covers of such rock groups as Poco and Crosby, Still and Nash before joining an LA improv group, The Groundlings, in 1975. He was always a gentleman and kind, which is rare for a comedy, says fellow Groundlings Patrick Bristro. His improv work landed Hartman a performing gig on Saturday Night Live in 1986. When he left 8 years later, his participation in 153 episodes had set a new record. His nickname was the Glue, says Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels. He kind of held the show together. He gave to everybody and demanded very little. He was very low maintenance. We leave you now with a photo of Hartman's grown daughter and his son.
Until next time.